Hello, I wanted to talk about another game, and this time it's Tokyo Xanadu. Or, like I want to call it, Legends of Y, Trails of Recycling. This game recycles a lot of things Falcom uses in its long-running games. Legends of Heroes and Y. The game itself is about a group of teens who have a special ability. The special ability is to wield soul weapons and to see the portals to the Eclipse. The Eclipse is some kind of netherworld that is existing parallel to the real world. It's inhabited by monsters, they are called greeds, and these things abduct people. They are pretty dangerous, so somebody needs to go in there and kill the Elder Greed, who is the boss of the labyrinth. In the end, that's the point of the game, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The story begins when Ku, our main character, meets Asuka. She is a wilder, that means she can see eclipse portals and has a spirit weapon, which is used to defeat the monsters inside. Every dungeon, when you enter it the first time, has a bunch of these greeds and a boss battle at the end, an Elder Greed. These dungeons can be replayed if you have cleared them without a boss. Ko has a spirit weapon of his own, and he rediscovers this the second time he finds an eclipse and wants to help Asuka. Asuka is not thrilled by having a rookie helping her, but after a little while she gets used to it and some other people join them. More wilders, more people who can use these spirit weapons. There are various people who know about the Eclipse and can provide the heroes with some extra equipment, upgrading their soul devices, and giving them armor and other things. You can already see this setup is directly taken from the Legends of Heroes series. There is an armor slot, a shoe slot, and one for the weapon, which doubles in this case as the Orbital gear, since it's a raging gear in this case. There's also two slots for accessories, which we already know from Legends of Heroes. They will either have some extra stats and make you immune to some debuff or status effect. The weapons look more or less like an Orbital gear in the Legends of Heroes series. There are slots for your augments, or in this case your elements. They are just called different. These can be equipped and give you a little boost in defense, in attack. There's also the Master Quartz, or Master Core in this case, because we need to call it a little different. And there are also some skills in here, which represent the skills you could use in your augment gear if you put an augment with a skill in that socket. You can also upgrade your slots just like in Legends of Heroes, and I'm pointing out the similarities a little too often, don't I? Speaking of equipment, there are various shops that sell you things. Like this sport shop has the sport jersey and city shoes, and you can find out where the best stuff is by using your phone and go to the main point and go to shop info. There is an info which shop has new stuff, and of course the armor and shoes and other equipment is listed too. They even reused a lot of character models from Legends of Heroes. The main character, Ko, looks quite a bit like Ween from Trails of Cold Steel, which, funny enough, it's a computer game in this game, so there's advertising for it in the computer store. Now, how funny is that? Now, there's nothing wrong with reusing a few of their character models. I mean, they did go a little too far with Tova, who is also Tova in this game. And I think that's where I draw the line. Since we're already talking about recycling, they also recycled the card game from Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2, Blade. You can play this in the arcade. Some people would call this lazy, others would say, yeah, it's good for the environment if we recycle things. There's also a recipe book, like in, again, the Legends of Heroes games, where you can just cook something and use one of your characters who is hopefully good at it. Or not. The main difference between this and Legends of Heroes is the fighting system. While you had a fighting system that was turn-based in Legends of Heroes, you have an action RPG here. Just like Y. If you are in a dungeon, you can change to up to 3 characters you can take with you, and you want to hit the opponents with the right element. Also dodge their shots. You have some special abilities which advance once you have a higher spirit level. You can have a higher spirit level by strengthening your bonds with your companions. The game is structured in a very strict way. There's always a little free time where you can run around, buy your items, and you have bonding points which you can use to have some bonding events with some of your peers. That will give you spirit points and the other one will get spirit points too, and so your spirit level will rise. It's a little similar to the battle link we have in Legends of Heroes Cold Steel, which is no surprise at this point. The game is more or less a remix of their existing games, which isn't bad in general, but it seems they could do better. The graphic is the same they use for Cold Steel. The story is quite interesting. I can't really say that about the characters, who are a little generic, a little more on the stereotype side of things, which happens rather often. Ever since they upgraded their graphics, their character seems to have been weaker. Maybe the same team works on the same thing? I don't really understand it at all. All in all, Tokyo Xanadu is a game that uses all the mechanics of the games before it, but doesn't have the long-running story. It's more a standalone game. It's good fun and probably a good way to get into Falcom games. The boss battles are a little annoying because, just like in any other action RPG, the boss has way too many hit points. You have to run around in circles way too long. But those boss battles have to be expected from games like this. Tokyo Xanadu might work even better if you haven't played any other games from Falcom before, because the glaring déjà vu effect will not be there, and that might help, because it's really hard for me to see these characters and not think, well, they're the same characters. The protagonist looks like Ween, which doesn't help at all, because my personal position on Ween is worst protagonist of a video game ever. But that's probably just me. A final conclusion: Tokyo Xanadu is a fun game that can be played without having too much backstory, which might be a plus, seeing how these long-running series of Falcom might be a bit much for a new player in the beginning.